Wonderful. So welcome back, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed your tea. I wish I was there to have tea with you, but I hope that you enjoyed it yourselves.
Tsama chipe patastile shoes and it's such a new joint your cheese and Benetola Yam to such a cookachana samchanta and the Jama songs to you use.
And so I know many of you, but I'll do just a very short introduction in case there's some of you that I haven't had a chance to meet yet.
The Manchishing mushing in Bana, so Matuno Mabina.
So my name is Kelsey, and I started working with ETSI in 2018, and I've been working with ETSI ever since. I'm currently a professor at a university in California, and some exciting news is that I'll be returning to Emory here pretty soon.
And Nimi like has 6 years and Emory coach Sandy Leramla and Chuje Lune at those Lepangusu by Yins. Tanda in Bina, Tanda California, University of California, Dola, Dr. Chimonana, Gigangi de Pachis, Imminent and that Khan Jojo, Yanche Emory Layonchi, and Emory Nelly Pachia, Conjojon Guzutius.
And before we get started with our second session, I just wanted to sort of highlight that there were actually 2 goals from our previous session, and maybe one is a little unexpected.
And Tandanga Zungu Mazingela, something that digging a literature, something Dinane, and each of me Masumara, Migi Nishi, Motorchins, Ratina, Neta, Migi Ninan, Chitia. Some major make in the notice as the motorchins.
So the first one is so that we could have some review of research and experiments and scientific method.
That you may chicares and I so with Tacheta, the vision Jita, needs a tablet de la Chajonchetes.
Second one is that since we are currently in the summer science pedagogy sessions, is that it was also hopefully a good example of people trying out new teaching techniques, and then we're able to kind of see how they go, see what we might want to do the same and what we might want to do differently.
That Shenda Michikares and Tandanga so Yakagi, Seriki, any subjon de Sud, Honsin Kitabgi, subjonchi Yuza. Anything of some as something triag chetep, Sawa Shenda Tilado, Pechetang by Bana, Candas to do, and Zendam when they go a Tangling Candaluchi Chido said Delaya, and it to the Sawa the Pechetang by Yago Dum do if not they touch the genres.
So throughout this session and then also our sessions together tomorrow, we'll have lots of chances to sort of return to these teaching techniques while also learning some new science.
That didn't die on the Sanying in the data capsule, so any Karsogre, Tandagi Jushin data, Terry Jangi Jangi, and Nisholaya, needs Henry Tiagi Chites, what in the door, Mutu Chigo, the Canado Chigo, the Tacticians.
So here we are at session 2 for biology, and we are going to take a look at this publication. If you wish, you can use this QR code to pull it up. It's also on the Google Classroom, and this is totally optional. You do not actually have to go to this paper if you don't want to.
Tandanga suits from the capsule, and a Simjik Somi, you retain us with Tagi, started under Delaya attention. You still a Yanko QR code to what they Chiparja Chitash or data, the tensions to Chatom and Shajatana Dire, Menaya to Google Classroom, Nalaya, put some day, Shasha used to understand the teacher to Laya Danka use.
So in our biology sessions, we've already been talking about evolution and circadian rhythms and sleep.
Tandanga to Tanda Jimmy against the Capsanga Soviet. Any Kasuga Penju down, Penny, Tinjungu Country down, Pege, Titako de la Yanga Suga Amotuchi.
And with this paper, we will go through this paper just in small pieces, and look at how this relatively new research relates with the topics that you've already been discussing so far.
that day and they tanda kiching sen takshe de la yang asu tumbu chi tako base study tanda nga su ge tanda bat jansha ju de ta ne draw kan lo chi da ma de ta yes.
Yeah, so the idea is you all have built up a really good foundation, and now is our chance to take a look at this publication together.
Da chi zo la ya ma shi ta kansan chi yo bi ro yes ta tanda im bana nga su nyam ta ani shimji ko wi tu partner chi sha ju de la ya nyam ta yes.
From the title, we have a hint as to what we'll be talking about, and that is that we will be looking at whether selection for a short sleep duration might be able to explain that humans get Alzheimer's disease.
Da de ko khashang la da ba na ro ro ta mi ge ta nga so ni thong wa chi dam ge yo ro ni ge tin thong chi ni ge yo ta chen da ba na ni thong dam ba de la ten de me la ya ene Alzheimer's ge na ti yong ne sa ti yong ge yo ro ko na sa ti yong ya ge ane chi yong la ya ge ni chu ti ane de ju chi ge ma re sa tres.
Now, I designed the sessions so that if you want to look at this paper and see the original research for yourself, you can definitely do that. And I will also kind of go through and highlight some of the main points from the paper.
Ani chi chu ge ngone ani chi shin ji ge sang de so so ngone ta ni to na do stana ji ge res ne te mche ani ta nga su nyam te ne shin ji so mi te na na ani chi ke chimbu ka ri chi do te ma re de mo chi lu yes.
In the last session, we talked about how research often starts with an observation. And so I'm going to just do a brief overview of these three main observations that the paper talks about.
Da nga su so tong ma de na la ya ta ship ki ke ne ko la de shi je sta ta na ba na su ge shin ji ko so mi de da and joy ju ge ga ne ani shinji chong de tan ro yu ga la ya ku chu ge ta shi ke chu sam chi de res wa ne de ta kar kar rin ta yes.
So the first observation this paper talks about is that they show some data that humans sleep less than other primates, and so this would be like gorillas and monkeys.
Da shen da nga su ge ta turum gu so cha shen da ani ring dang da da ge ti ro piu shen da da dur ba yin ba na mi de ti chue ti yin yong wa la ni ge yo pa ge ta shi chong yo res.
A second observation that they mention is that humans have a higher prevalence of Alzheimer's disease as compared with these other primates.
Da shi ta da ge ta shi ni ba de ka re se na ko ge ta da nga su ge turum so cha shen da da dur ba yin na me la ya ta da Alzheimer ge ta da Alzheimer ge na cha chi ora o di na ya ge ti ko ge chap chi chyo yo ba ani ta shi chong yo res.
And then the last observation is that the prevalence of Alzheimer's in humans is less than 2% at age 60, so it's pretty low, whereas Alzheimer's is present in about 40% of individuals who are over the age of 90.
Da ti shen da chi ka re chong res na ta da na sa di ro Alzheimer na sa ti ani lo da ko tu chi ge tang la yin ba na ti ge chap che ti ja che ni sam chi tang ya me lu ku chu ge be ka se chap che ti ja che shi chu yin ba de yang ta shi chong res.
For this session, we are mostly going to focus on the first observation, and I would ask you to keep in mind number 3 as we move into our first activity.
Ta da nga su che gu tang po la ya tu be ka se ani che chu ge ge ne to s ba di sam lo ni de ro chis.
Okay, so we're ready for first activity. And for this one, I'm going to ask you to make a prediction, and we will do this with a writing prompt.
Da de tang po de la nga su ka chi se ne de tang dre we ga ne ani de chi ro chis ta de chi ris ka se ta ngom po chi ris ro chi ro chis ta de la ya yang ko jistang ge ta tin ku sa pon ti mo to chi yes.
And we're doing this as a writing prompt to connect back with your pedagogy sessions where you learn some different teaching techniques. And this is a chance for us to see them in action. All right, so I'm going to, so you can just think about this in your head for now, but think about the typical age when people might have children. And now I'm going to ask you to predict whether you think Alzheimer's will affect evolutionary sort of fitness or reproductive success. And this is why I said, remember point number 3 from the last slide, because we see about 2% of 60-year-olds, but then 40% of 90-year-olds.
Alzheimer nasati chomba imbaina roa tiga Alzheimer nasati chomba ina tiga ngasu gu penju gu chhe tang yana chi chepe gi tundi la ya shi chintu mute sa ya te kol sam tang chi swa ta te ngi ngela sheba na shin re ta de ngongi tiga na ne tunsin simba te wa simba te kapsa ngasu la kari yole sena jacha ge lush tukchu imbaina jacha nis la nasati na yo pa tang lu gu chu ge sna jacha shi chu la chi na chi roa.
So the first step of this will be, you'll think about this and write it yourself, and that will be in preparation to discuss with each other. So for your prediction, you can just write yes or no, and then also write your reason, the rationale, why you think that's the case. Right, so we'll take a minute or 2 to do this, and then we'll have a little bit of discussion.
나올라.
No.
다들 네 kunzu 가시기 비유의 님도 여기 슬라이드 님도 샤 디디 업로드 치고 치스 되는 소리.
La.
비유의 님도 여기.
Oh.
여기 저라. This slide 구글 쉐어 치면서 구글 클래스룸에 그 인지 보이. English version.
What? Kelsey, can you share the Tibetan version in the Google Classroom as only view?
Sure, I can add it in there. Yeah, I think I wasn't sure. I should just share it, and then you'll add in the rest of the translations.
Yes. Share as only view, and then I think that's better. Yeah.
Sure. I'll do that.
Yeah, I need to work on the rest of the slide in this afternoon.
Yeah. Okay, I will.
Thank you.
Let's see. Well, I think I might just put a PDF of it there for now.
That's also good.
Okay. That may not work because when you convert the PDF, that the Tibetan script split sometimes.
Oh, you think? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have it in different.
We can make a different copy and then share it into this one classroom as view only.
Yeah, that's a good idea. You can replace that sometime tomorrow with the updated one.
And so this is, yeah, everyone can be discussing the question while I'm getting.
They can't hear you like at the moment.
Oh, they can't hear me?
Yeah, they can't hear you.
Okay, are they, I guess it looks like they're discussing though.
Yeah, they're discussing.
Yeah,
Okay.
they are just.
Yeah, I just have different things on different accounts is why this is taking a minute. I am switching things from one account to the other. Yeah, I guess it's taking some time. I tried to share it, but it's not actually showing up.
다와는 얘기 진짜 나는 게 다와 열어. 다와 맨날 얘기 다와로录下来.
That's yeah, I can't agenda gonna take a chide.
Vale, you know this. 제가 야 단단 맨날 제가 야 갑자기 지야라. 제가
That's all to check.
아 다와로 디셔.
You're
I have the PDF, but I'm having trouble getting the actual Google Drive one to where, yeah, that's fine. It's not good in that one. No. I mean, the PDF.
Okay, we can continue this and then.
Maybe we can just kind of do a little bit here and then I can try to get it again. It's just
Yeah.
it's not showing up and it would take me some time to figure it out.
Yeah, we can get on with the class actually. Like.
Okay, I'll come back to it and add it once I can, once I get that working.
Okay, I'm putting you on the speaker then.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, you are on speaker now.
Okay, great. So thank you for discussing, everyone. I think let's hear from at least one or two people what you're thinking. So you can let us know, what did you say for your prediction? And also tell us about your reasoning or your rationale.
아니 사막에 트레이더 나와 두지체 스네 단다 제초베다 이렇게 제타야나 이렇게 니기로 아니 뭔박가리 지기메다 아니 데티나도 지구는 그 진센다 아니 리바 그 다시고 하데 간도 이미테 모토 제로치스
아니 던더디기 아니 노그레 제우도라 던더가르세나 아주디 아니 에저먼스에 나자디 아니 다가치 파마니레 요바이나티 아니 리지디 아니 가르세디 질라 아니 부드 솔파지 아니 로웨 서가르세나 아주디 리지디 치마도고라 에저먼스에 가정 단당 아주디 나다우기디노라 가르세나 템바냐사 제아디 티니노라 아니 데데도 뇨리 시본도 아니 따디노 데데 뇨린도 디티노게 사자디 초리초린도 티니지 니레스닝 티니지 고스
네. I think it affect because as my understanding, because Alzheimer's disease, it reduces the cells that is responsible for your memory, and I think it will genetically passed down to the offspring, so it will definitely affect.
Okay, so this is the idea that it might have a genetic cause and then that could be passed on to the offspring.
Right, that under the banner so thing as gelatin and it go that rub Himalaya shooting triggers as your water is.
And I'll kind of add on to the question is, so even if it's going to be passed on to the offspring, do we think that this would affect the ability of someone to have offspring?
That thing banner getting a so good those that rub Jimatela Yako Jitu Chig Yopain Banan de Latin de rub Jimasagorota, Marab Jimati and you could get young cookies chepegis or Juteta.
So keeping that in mind, maybe let's hear from at least one more person to see if there's any other different thoughts about this.
The data mando wants to tell us on your nas.
Alzheimer disease the manche lo tuju enchele ngudus esonzani tuju enchele manche gyuba matay gidinde nizu di figure gidinda karsa mechanism shishto tishike and dus shugin shidi.
We think it will not affect because the Alzheimer's disease is is affecting more the age above 60. So when you think about the evolution or the reproduction mechanisms over this age of 60 is not that related to reproduction and other things related to this.
Okay, great. And thank you for sharing both the response and the rationale. For these, the reasoning and the rationale is actually a really important part of the responses. And this raises a really good point that there is a distinction between something that can be genetically inherited versus something that would actually affect the ability to have offspring. And so it's true that in this case, since there is this difference in age, typically people would have children before the age of 60, that this Alzheimer's disease could be passed on genetically, and it probably wouldn't actually affect the ability to have children.
Nico and the Alzheimer's disease in Nedi, Alzheimer's Nedi, you shooting at Suga, Julie Mancrujitu Chigger in Banayan, Telatendete, and she chepe down, taking you Balaya, and she shooting Maturgi, Nesutiondos.
And these slides are now on the Google Classroom in Tibetan. I was doing that in the background. So the slides are on Google Classroom now.
That under day, Trisha, the match your tradition, the dot and the period set to Google Classroom like Trisha years.
Now we are ready to focus on that first observation. Like I said, most of the session, we're going to talk about just the first observation, that there are these differences in sleep time for humans and other primates.
That under I'm going to ship an ancient that ship called something tapshi tampo de la rota dandanga suga chutan de to page or de tapshi tampo de kola ya to the chigin swa and then so turum so chicken trailer ya and then nigi to la ya kepakari meditations.
First, we are going to look at some data that is about sleep time in humans, and this is going to be a good chance for us to practice looking at some graphs together.
That Tampotranga Sumigi Niagi Tunko Lachitagi, the Lachitagi, State, Nanel Hapotanda, Chiliacho, 야 트리요라 트리라야 지 로야 당 트리라 다야 기 정대체 고거야고 치레샤스
Sometimes some of my students in California, they're joking with me that I have them look at graphs too often, but it is a useful skill to practice.
다 다당이 럽트 치사게 아니 캘리포니아 럽트 참고나나 럽트 쪽에 삼삼라야 트리데라 예 망보 땡게도 세게 아딘데 시기도 인바이나야 지고 트리라야 다야당 트리라 로야기 지 록세지 고 다야기 지 타블럼 장아치로와 어때요 고 지세마소나 제지 배초 유튜브 세지레스.
All right, so we are ready for the first graph here. And just so that we know what we're looking at, we see at the top, this says total sleep time, and this is total sleep time for humans. And so that's number of minutes on the y-axis. And on the x-axis, we see age.
다데 강랑아 스타바이나 데게 아니 가린데 시작부터 타바이나 강강라야 니 촌돔 얘기 뒤인세게 뜻을 디레샤스와 엔테가스 디스트샤이레스 연쇼 강데라야 아니 연쇼 세나단데기 jon트데 강라야 아니 카르마기나라야 니가스 꾸요미기 디레스와 카르마나 코셔레스 아니 다 테틱 강라로 원이 파티기 요사데 강라야 아니 리체레스.
And so I'll ask a question to you and feel free to talk with one another. Based on these data, would we say that people are sleeping more or less as they get older?
다 단다게 데라 지금 그르데라 따제 다 장토데라 따제로와 니치츠고 데강라 저데 렌자로 제스 니치츠 판츠난 콜라 기지시나 디도 스타디 갑서 맞추 루게 도가 동라 루 gem바 차기 차게 내가 저 녀게 뒤인디 라드 그거에 통 그거도스.
Since we can discuss, and then once you had a minute to discuss, if someone wants to share what you think, that would be great.
Gendawa.
Yeah.
Tanda dinala time jiteshada. Tuzuji. Tuzu de kandechire. Pena lochi ki tuzu chigore mize gatsu chigre.
On the vertical line, you have that one is a minute. Is like a total sleep time minute. That means a day or a month or a year or what is that total?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. And so we could think of what might make sense. And so here it's starting at 450, and there's 60 minutes in an hour. And so, and you'll have fun. See what comes up if you do 450 divided by 60.
어디 드랍에 아부도 세주 공부지로 시스타다 데라야 되시자 바이나 시제당 아치레사스. 다 시제당 아치지기 요바이나 데 아니 콜로 스나야 다와스나야 스니마스나야 스레 치츠치츠 시제 아치데 다 치츠치나 카르마 투치요 장아지 투치 괴지 다다다 스타디 갑스고 전dom세비 갑스 아니 다티 가리레도 치츠키투 스타나티투스.
And now we've got two questions about how many hours are these, and also is it more or less over time?
Atwa ni chag dwas ti kapsang asu ta jonti gangla yochute chitsu kasu kasare shasti tantane lu gemba chag chage nyeg tin re dugde thon dugdu se gya joate ni chag dus
주루 숨 소루라 숨제 죽주 까마 인사레스 다와
re kamata inla
까마 인바체 단데 디 로겐 샤두잔라 뇽루 있어라
re
로겐바다 굽주 난도와 레두 잠바야 아니 굽주 제주다 둔주도와 레이나네 까마 가젤레도 제주라 숨제 죽주 쳐저다 데스만다 니 공만다 주루 숨 소루라 근데 로 진서 Loshembe gana mangut ni nyekdo. Kama shibjang of Junevina, Jetuk Shibju Shebje. Amo Choto Jes in Yadudo.
Yeah, thank you. His answer is, I think the sleep time reduces when we age, because when you look at around like 70, 80 or 90, it's about 60 into 60, 360 minutes, about 6 hours. So, and when we're younger, we have like 16 to 8 is for 480, so that's like sleep 8 hours, so it reduces when you get older, according to the data.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And so we've got answers to both questions with this response. In that this is true, right? We do see less sleep here, maybe only 6 hours, but when people are younger, they are on average sleeping a lot longer. And it seems that we figured out this is per night, so about 8 hours per night.
That draw the land check on state and as we did, and a shaman relates to like to say the Ridua. That to Chugushan at Rot and the Yakarmarwa. The name as so that low Chambu becomes look Gamba becomes the Chanyan Banach to do store and a low Chanchan becomes go that Mawas to J good in the new dose.
And just one more thing I'll point out about this graph before we move on to the next one is that we also see there's a lot of variability. That's what all of these other data points are. Those are each one individual. And the line is the average, but we can see that there's a lot of variation in sleep time for all of these ages.
Ani tanda chang mado do digi karitan gore sistambalaya ngatsu ge changtu re ngu chang biore studies tambalaya changtu data la ya ku chapse ti ji mando ayo parwa ku parola yang khepre yo pati chang biore sta tanda digi thi ro thi kari chang gore sna ku su chanyum gi ti chorwa de chang gore stima to ne de kapse man jushi ji ni ge changtu re ngu ne ta ba bana ku su parola yang khepre yo pati ngi gu biore.
All right, ready for graph number 2. And this graph looks a little bit different. And with this one, just so we know where the data is coming from that we're looking at, is this study was specifically conducted in Haiti. And I just included a map here so that we could see where that was. And Haiti, it's sort of near the US, but it's farther south, sort of in between North and South America. And it's just this small region right here. And one important thing to note about this study is they specifically chose this community without electricity. And the idea is that they'll be able to see what are the sleep patterns when we don't have sort of the artificial lights to turn on and off.
That's all the
And as I mentioned, this graph looks a little different than the last one. The idea of each of these is that this line is showing usually the median. So this is a middle value. And then we can see the range from low values to high values.
Barogi tangtante kaswin barawata barogi tangtante karimbati changores that tene ko tangto te ta yang chapse te wa kana chabiyoresna that they go wala yo pategi ku geta the mawati che ne gala yo pategi thua de changores.
With this one, we can see on the vertical axis that it is marked in hours. So we don't have to do the math that Wangdon mentioned before. And also these data are separated into these different age groups on the x-axis. In the top section, we can see that this is showing the amount of hours just for time in bed. And then at the bottom, they are showing the number of hours for the actual time spent sleeping. So now, again, I'm going to ask you to talk with your team and take a look at this yourself. And the question this time is, does it seem that people are mostly sleeping the whole time that they're in bed? Or is there a difference here? They may be in bed sometimes, but not yet sleeping. Yes, and so again, everyone can discuss, and in a minute, we will hear a response from a volunteer. How are we doing with discussion? Do we need another minute, or is someone ready to share?
Twitter content those Chesola Sony way on that Twitter check it to sit on the go those. Oh, still discussing. I think they're in a deep discussion.
Okay, no, that's good. It's just, it's hard to tell over Zoom. right. So I think when we're ready, we'll hear from someone about your thoughts from this, if it's the same or different, the time in bed and the sleep duration.
다다 다리 바나 디가 아니 공수 성로지스 다트와데 고 예산한 데다 아니 니 구역이 딩 니체 바로라야 아니 캐프도모도 디코인스
냐트나 냐디강라 데스 nga오지 총아들이 총아동 코니다 니코니완 로레도가 냐체 니쿠세데 고 차상데 데스 지라인조지 전직 잡을선도
야체 손다 가리렘베
로직시랭 아점바데 배치 냐츠가 냐야데 고 니완 로지 니쿠에데 다만도 하고 이제라서야 도체더라.
Yeah, if you he's talking about the variation in the time because if you look at the variation in the time in that the people age 65 or older, like the graphically that is the second most or second least, and then on the sleep duration is pretty much that is the least time. Yeah.
다 디나라 디유베서리스도 페나 녀선나라 녀야데 투저링아 녀기도와 망차 페나 숨주 송하다 죽주 소죽다 응압주 바로 이나 녀선나 녀야데 대야데 녀선나 다스 녀대야데 추저 주라오지 생기도와 에버리지 이나야 니응원에 고야데 추저 드윤라오지 인사래 다단다 겐데지라야데 겐고데저 가르도스나 디나라 오딜타이나 당기 간저기 그라 공마디나로 따두 장래야 겐 로션바데저 니망아녀 겐고 dezo nyua doa tanda dina la wo de ya sleep duration la dina tawina gemba dezo chanyum ni nya ya de manga doa gemba dezo ni nya ya da yige nya sana de ya ni that's tawo cha ro che
So over here for instance for the age group 36 to 50 we can see that the time they spend in bed is really much than the sleep duration because about 10 hours they be in bed but they usually sleep around like 7 hours and also with the Tenzin mentioned earlier when we talk about the age group of 65 or older and in the previous graph we have seen that older group older group they sleep less but over here we see that they sleep more and also the like time difference between the sleep duration and time bed is not that big for difference compared to other age groups.
Yes. Okay. These are so many good things to notice about the graph. So I think I'll take, there's going to be two that I'll highlight, but I think for now, right, these are really good things to think about, and then I'll highlight two of the things that have been mentioned. And so the first thing is this is a really good approach that was used to focus in on this 36 to 50 age group to provide a specific example of the differences of here this is almost 10 and here this is around 7. That's a really good way to look at this when you can focus in on just this one age group and have one specific example.
logi ta dinjin chita pa chila ta de de ani de na lai khebra kana ro chi do sa de la ta pa na no ko ji thi shi de na do la ya ji ko ko lan tang ta me ya ho chi
And then for the second comment about looking at this age group of greater than 65, this was going to be my next question. So we already started talking about it. But yes, this is, I think, a really good observation too, of comparing it to the last graph, is that this is kind of telling us the opposite, that this age group seems like they're sleeping even a little bit more than the others. Well, maybe that was frozen. Is anyone able to hear me?
Hello.
Hello?
Yeah, maybe I'll do the translation for that part.
Okay, sure, thank you. I think maybe that Sandra was saying that, but that would be great. Thank you.
That Tanji Diridwa. Chidan Tanda Digi Pirigi Lo Truju Kangi Nizustua, the Zutrene Morang Deshija in the Ine numbers of Nanonia Gonzulesons. The Tanjing and Zudingi Piri di Nanola, Loya Cherin Rudizambala, Nikuze di and Yundu Uresi de Piric Tenswa. Tida Mantu Bacheze, Tarin de Karicha de Yorelana. Ani lo chuju rengane ya lengyo du chedi ni khwegi ani yunze de masun di ma so do number 20 yores.
And if we had more time, I would love to have a full discussion about this, but just something you can think of is, why might this be the case? What's a possible explanation for the difference in these data?
Kisi nganzu le thandu thusu yeba yimba ina andi kan li andreshe mangs ya gen deba yus. Yimba ina ya dan number zo gomba shegu ya ji kare shegu yore le du sambala. Dinde tanda nedan ni gnano la ani lo gemba ni gi ni kuzile manda ba leber wa. Manda ba le de ti ani ken da ani chigi gyabjong gi nizu khari ina se de di to ya gomba shegu yores.
And just one possibility to consider is that these data were collected specifically from, okay, I can restart that. So one possibility to consider is that these data are specifically collected from a community without electricity. The other graph that we looked at was from a community with electricity.
Da de kasa tuji chenga de para de cheros karchina tangi tandan de bana nga sumus ka de ta lo me sa sa che chine ko mi gi san de tant de chi chi to wa ngoma tin ban fa yang tin de ne tant maris.
Okay, great. So I think we've got one more graph to look at to give us a little bit more information about sleep duration in humans.
Can you repeat that again? Sorry.
Yes, we've got one more graph to look at to learn more about sleep duration in humans.
Da nga su yang shen nga su la de thuji ta yes di kap su nga su kar ta gen sen na me gi na la ya ani ko ni ko gi twin chi wa de ko la ta gen.
And in this one, again, we have another example of a different kind of graph.
Da de kap se na yang a su le thuji gi yang chi rig man ro chi yes.
And one of the first differences that we would notice is that this one is set up as a bar graph. So we saw the line graph and we saw the boxes in the last one. And now this one, we see these bars.
Tambo de la yang a su ge thuji tik chi sha ju thuji ti thong wa ti che la yang a su ge chi yo ju thong so da dan dan de bai na nga su ge yang thuji na ne na ri ge mo la yo pan di ten yes.
For this one, we see that the vertical axis is the same. So this still says hours of sleep, but this horizontal axis is different. Now we don't see age groups. We see that this is sleep during different times of the year.
Da de kap se jong thu de gang la chi pa re se ni ku ya gi tu chu ka song ko yo me de ro wa man the thu de gang la ya man do des the thu gang la ka re sa na lu tang de do mai ba che ani lu chi kana la ya ani chu man do ka se ni ka su ku yo me de lu chi ki tu man do ka se res.
For this one again, we looked at these communities in specific locations. This line that's sort of the blue color is the sun and is located here in Africa. And then here we see in the green bar graph is from this Simane community, which is in South America.
That the Casa Ganla and Mumburo Stoati, Corneris, and African Yugi such a sense as Stoatuani at onto the church, and then Tera Yugi, Jankush Stoati, Tandagi, so America such a Yugi, Siemens as a store or such a Tony Chonjuris.
For this one, we can see that there is some difference in the amount of sleep for these two communities, since this line is above the bars.
That thing on a sugar coge, so the Mandanic parola, and Nikuya between Mandawa and those.
And something that is similar between these two communities, though, is that it seems that they have more hours of sleep in the winter as compared with hours of sleep in the summer.
That could still do turbine by now. And a Yakali, Gunka, and a mark with Patricias in Chati, Pranichalaya, Monte Bichis.
And so my goal in showing these several different graphs of amounts of sleep for humans is so that we can see the different kinds of variation by age and by time of year.
That and that the letter Tishimando, Tengun Sendicari, Sena, and also Mandawa. Yana Chimando Caps and a quany between Laya and equal a Kepler Candado.
And the idea is that if we want to look at data to compare the amount of sleep for humans and other primates, it's good to have a full idea of the differences in the amounts of sleep just within humans.
That not so be a kitty or me down any tourism sort of any queer doing the Dunito by Bana, and so I am Chiga Tanto de Katsu Yongi and Chita Jibo down Pensopo. That's how much you do to your dog.
And with that, we are now going to start talking a little bit more about sleep in primates other than humans. And these are some examples of other primates with some nice photos.
Me mind big and it tourism such as Shendaganala and a new between the Katsume teaching us instead and me mind be Shenda Dakarsuwe tourism such as Shendagi and per catch those years.
Yeah, and so just for a moment, our brains can take a small break. And I have a couple of my own photos of some of these primates that I'm going to share with you.
And then so this chetty parotella nala naranguni any Tandagi. Later, what and the tourism such a Kutsugi or like project you per catch use the Chitangins.
Yeah, so just last week, I visited the zoo in San Diego. And so this is in the southern part of California.
That the Tongamana California get that will show like you to show you big San Diego Chins College Chimpanzees.
And when I was there, I had the chance to see. So these are some gorillas. You can see them moving around a little bit in this photo.
That take up certain gorilla catchings in a.
And I also got to see, so maybe these I'm not sure, but you can see that they're swinging around. It seems like they're having fun.
That day by now, Chinichi Chonchi to Timothy de Patondoa.
And this one I thought was very relevant because this orangutan is sort of taking a nap with the sack.
That's the day of Sayako. They are do some chance called Ganlaya, Redo Chiho that any neat on Kuyagi teaching the chess.
And then I think last one is this orangutan was having just a lot of fun playing with this pine cone, kind of made it into a toy. And it was fun to see this animal play.
The deal I could give it as a current lapala exhibition, no things as to what they or they could get some chidochi, they think Nico Timothy dishes.
Okay, Okay, and now, now we'll go back to the slideshow. I just wanted to share some of my photos.
And then the method is thing on the tangent more color yes.
All right, so with this, the goal is, since we are talking about evolution and sleep, I think that it's helpful to revisit this and take a look at this phylogenetic tree.
다다가 속에 지금 펜줄당 니기 콜레기지식이 상가 속에 근데 리디당 제비 간행가 속에 이제 지역동 보시거라 델라지 타바인바네 펜트사레스.
And at the bottom here, we see that this is showing time in millions of years ago. So this is a really long time. And that's indicating that as we go back in these lines, that we are going farther and farther back in time. And just as a refresher, it's always at these connecting points that's indicating that there is a shared common ancestor around that time.
아니 그 같이 줘야겠다고 니르스고 왔던 이거 바로라야 투몽기 미보지요 바상비 그랬어.
So a specific example would be if we look at this point here, we see that there's a shared common ancestor of chimpanzees and for humans.
단단하게 오버데 타바인바는 되게 가르쳐 거래서는 미당 챔피언이 바로라야 투몽기 미보지요 바상비 그랬어.
And this is meant to show that we're seeing this evolution over time. It's not the case, for example, that we started here and that monkeys became orangutans, became gorillas. It's not that kind of linear progression. It's just that there are these shared common ancestors. All right, so I believe for this that you all have the cards, that maybe they have colors and they have like A, B, C, D on them. So this is your chance to use those if you have them. And this is another prediction question, but it's multiple choice instead of writing.
다단다데 지치나 제출라야 아주게 A B C D 담가 담야기 전체여 주고 싶어도 요치레스 다디 여바나 배치당하게 고거이다 아스와 안티야 제출라 아니 그 담가 마트라치 아니 데 나니 지 담야 되네 yes.
All right, so the question, and you can see it here, is how many hours do primates other than humans typically sleep?
다 좋아디 가르세나 나가 미 마인비기 토른 소차시엔 바 자마치 톤 닌치크나다 치초가 저스 니게요레스 니크요레스.
And
you can
can't quite see them, so I might need a little help knowing what.
You can count 1, 2, 3, and then we'll share together.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I'll do a countdown. So we'll do 1, 2, 3. Okay, I think I see, it seems like I see a lot of yellow. I'm not sure what letter is that one.
Sambola, Dorji Sambola, Dorji can help us.
Okay.
It's muted, sorry. Kuma son dandade mute jesha.
Ude.
Dakodo, thank you.
Mancha di sumbar dura C.
Okay, C, most C.
Kashi beach and kashi dirish.
B and T. Sarah B and Sarah D. Mostly C.
Mostly C's. Okay, let's take a look at the data. So here we've got another graph, And this red arrow, I'm just highlighting where humans are. So Homo sapiens, this is humans right here. And we can see that they have quantified hours of sleep for humans and a lot of other species of primates. And when we look at this graph, we can see that most of you chose the response C, and that lines up with these data. So this is probably 8 or so hours here, and then ranging up pretty high, but most of these primates are going from 8 to maybe 14 or so.
다시 저 담야 시단야 티티샤 스타단다 두스타바이나 담보고 주야 지스토 구주 근데 가심 바나 페토버레샤인 바나 직찬용 그 잡스다 마시시도 인바나 제다 아니 교식 바로라 디두스.
And I put some examples of these species on here. So this will be an example of Homo sapiens. So this is a group of us photo that we took at Emory.
다 because 비츠하기체 purchase 같이 자이스 로디 마마 에머리를 제주 purchase.
And if we look at this graph, it would say that on average we're sleeping around 7 hours a night.
당가 저도 스타바이나 들대가 타바이나 당가 저 찬윤제 바이나 니마치라야 찬용게 주드나니 두스.
And this is less than, so the example on the other side is this primate that sleeps the most. And on average, this animal is sleeping over 15 hours each day.
다다데 이 쇼차라요 바데로와 데레스 고 두름 소차 지금 바제 자녀인 바에는 니코에테 주스 중앙에 마니 그레스.
And so these are the data that is actually supporting the idea that humans are tending to sleep less than most of these other species of primates.
다 데카레스는 아초게 미데와 미데 아니 두름 소차 신다던 들바인 바에나 디츠티스 뉴알의 얘기도 세 때라다고 지금 잡주던 람다 진얘기 아니 장토디레스.
All right, so this also ties back to our first session. We talked about observations and we talked about hypotheses. And now it's your chance, it's your time to write a hypothesis of your own.
당가 속에 다시 대시자요레 디체라야 아니 최셔콜라야 대시자요레 스타단다인 바네 치수라 치수랑게 네 최셔 디체야게 고급티페인.
And what we'll do is so we'll get your ideas about the hypothesis, and then we're going to compare these with the hypotheses that the authors actually wrote about in the paper.
다단다 치수라 담보 치수라야 최셔딘의 지야기 고급티인스 디체라야네 지샤주기 치수기 최셔대다 니 좀바보게 단다 소미크나라야 무투 지샤주기 최셔치와 데이터니 냠트드르기인스.
And so now you can take a few minutes to write a hypothesis about sort of the explanation for why maybe evolutionarily we have this shorter sleep in humans as compared with other primates.
다시 들어지 스타델라야 맞소 가르스그다 가리치네로 당아서 펜줄그 트레니 가리치네 밀라야 미라 니뉴아지요로 티크여바데 펜줄그 트레니 가리치네 종아임바이나 아스타 조데 네 드레딩 아소게 두름 소차 신다던 두르바이나 밀라야 네코 니뉴아 타 요로 두아다 탄토티간데로와 요바데 아니 지 펜줄그 테니 셰바임바나 가리치네 종아이나 아세 티콜라 네 저저스트로치스.
And same as before, you can write this down and then we will also share so that we can talk about it.
딱 먼저 송아지 쪽에 수수수 들어치스 러치노 제라니 가서 냠도 되지yes.
Okay, let's start to gather a few ideas, and we'll try to hear from a few people because there are lots of possible responses to this. So let's gather a couple of different ideas.
아니 먼저가 두과이 가르침슬나 아니 심제 샴발레 밀라 아니 니뉴가 여기 진전데 아니 심제 샴바조다 코 칼로레 레바 인간에 텐주 쇼 메와 인자 사야다 냐지 좀도 쇼쇼 타미와 인자 들으면 제 뇽뉴 인자 아니 니 마니 오레스 아니 미라 삼로다야 망보여 인자 디게 아니 들라테네 아니 수소 니마타와기 레가 망보여 인자 디게 아니 냐야데 뇽아 차고 오레스.
So they think the reason why human has less sleep time is because it depends on two things: thinking and work. And other primates have less work or less thinking to do, and the human has a lot of work to do and a lot of thinking to do. So that's why women tend to have less sleep duration.
Okay, great. Yeah, let's keep going. Let's get more ideas.
ngaso rakhatang bodin ani ngaso karaja nyenyang chinde karepse karajena socha jamba dangdana ani malap shawa ma dang tani gumkho ma tani tangdusa ani karajan thari pepche mo tongjo kichin tani ngaso togo chiga ni lapa khorang chashi de ani karajena yarji karaja chimondwa yana telatini nyenyang yongres.
Yeah, also work and thinking, and also there's more need for humans, and also with the technology, and also one of my colleague mentioned about because the complication of the brain. So as it becomes more complicated, need more like it tend to have less sleep.
Okay, let's get one more idea.
아니 당가서 그렇게 있는데 지선을 이래와 다단다 가서 미대 아니 년용화 크게 짐선라테니 아니 그런 치조 몸보여 대상발라 소소가 아니 칼라디가 이나래 아니 마음비 아니 차르젠티야 대소치 대상발라 그런 아까서 덴자가 당 시큐리티 요러와 덴자가 라가 템보 용요래 다 소처 젠다 또 이마이나 니 몸보 크게 대상발라 야 파스네 다 용야라서 덴지지 대상발라 가서 그냥 제 랍시마텔라 아니 니 용화 코네 아니 리카 모제 다서 아니 가래 펜질 landam moyo or tendis.
Because humans tend to have a less duration of sleep, but I think it's because when you sleep less, you have more time to do other things, and like collecting food or do other things. Also, in this sense, they have more security than the other animals, other primates. If they sleep longer time, they have the risk of losing their life. And with this, and humans tend to sleep less, and they just pass that on to the next generations.
Okay, this is great. So let me now, I'll share. There's 3 hypotheses that they talk about in the paper, and really you have touched on all of them that they talk about in this paper.
tanda tege tanda 심지 좀이 되게 나라야 네 고속에 쳐서 숨지 지요 예스와 tanda 치수가 내시 잡아다 봐이나 고속에 쳐서 샤바데 아니 간자 치수에 뭐도 나선스.
So as I mentioned, there's 3 hypotheses that they talk about in this paper. And the first 2 are related to what we just mentioned about sort of the safety and the security and needing to be having protection. And just to provide a little bit more detail about this idea, the paper talks about when there was this change from primates sleeping in trees to humans sleeping on the ground, that might have been a factor in needing to have this extra security and needing to be awake more.
Dandata kutsu tena la ya teshe tus jabsha stanga so jising semni ta ma ta sagala nye ti chin stambala ya ane ko ta tinja ta tu tinda la tene de tirwa ane ko jigani nywa kuya ta ani sele de tu ma gu yo pagene ta tinga shas.
And these first two hypotheses mentioned in the paper are very related because they really are just saying that we needed to sleep less because of increased risk of maybe not being safe because of other animals, and also maybe an increased risk of attack from other humans. And if we're sleeping, we wouldn't be able to be prepared for these.
Da shanak sende man ko sagana yebe kapse chene ko socho jenge sa season jira gi nyenga chembu chichen ru yorwa ne da ko mi shenda ge yang ko no tsita ge nyenga chi chi ru yorwa dis tambala data le da ye ge cheto ne ni nywa chi khu yo pati le dus.
And then the third one, this is related to what was mentioned about sort of things having to do with work, maybe gathering food, and even the differences in sort of the brain structure. And this one is saying that if humans were sleeping as long as their common ancestors, then there would be less time to socialize, and that means less time to learn from others.
That they say maybe any among Turum socha genta gen shinto any jurambula new kuba in bana, no could me genda nyamton denji me bata, and the Latin de Taya, Shendas and the Chiagia, so yon chagri latus.
And in this case, we can think of when it's saying socialize, that might include things like work and like gathering food and the other activities that you all mentioned. Okay. Oh, well, I didn't mean to go to the next one quite yet. Okay, we have about 15 minutes. And so I'm actually going to stop sharing for the moment because I would like to leave a little bit of time for questions and discussion. And we still have about 5 minutes or so of things to do for the class, but that means we have about 10 minutes for questions, discussion, anything you'd like to talk about.
Kamsindi tsaba la ya ni kama nga skina tsasareswa ni tik jela kama chu screen la tanda kama chunga slalwa kama chu screen la ya en shitsuna na ya chi samtsu sonyo yo pa na ya na yan ko draw the language in the do yo pa na yan so chis draw yu na dan ro chi samtsu yu na so ro chi sa ta.
Hello. So, in the case of the Haiti people survey for the sleep duration, has anyone done some sort of comparison between the sleep quality or the duration of the sleep and then the Alzheimer in their community? The prevalence of the Alzheimer disease in that community.
Yeah, and this is a great question. And to my knowledge, no one has done that exact study that you are proposing. So that could be a great idea for a study to do. But no, we don't know that. We don't have that information.
단다 주어데 데와 단다 해테기 유노 미푸스나 소데티나 텔레코 니기 트윈다 티즈코라 탁시드요와 네데탄 데데탄 코스기 니기 트윈디타야나 니기 피카 네텔라탄 데데 코스나라야 사이머기 나 차치오와 어디 가는로 유메기 콜라야 탁시신지 드요로에스 탁시신지 드요 마레스 탄디차라야 마랑 코스인바나 티칸라 네 탁시신지 민두스.
And I think based on your question, I would even have a question back for all of you about whether you would have a hypothesis in that case, like knowing that sleep duration in that community. Do you think it would be a higher or a lower prevalence of Alzheimer's?
That and the things tambalaya the aniko data jeji chitsulaya pa trashtangi insta kosogi ane nigi tuin juwa and the mi kutsuditina no meet is nigi tuin de la shisha by bana chitsugi susha kanado chisares the tilatani de kutsudina de Alzheimer na sati chabiagi chapseti chua yongsare samgde chua yongsare samgde kanado insare samgus.
Maybe there is a less Alzheimer's diseases because when people get good quality of sleep, I think that also has some sort of impact on the brain. And also when there is no electricity, I think people do more some sort of social interaction. And through the social interaction, I think it also has some sort of significant impacts on the psychological and mental state.
Yeah, so I think this is great. You also offered several possible explanations. And the first one you mentioned about sort of the time spent sleeping. We are going to talk more about that tomorrow. I'll stop there. Yeah, so we'll talk more about that tomorrow.
Yesu ya botes tambalaya tigita zubotan lepatan samala pengrua tambalaya chiteres nine nga so logme pini kolaya mi shendan yam ten rinji che ko kapte maayngwa telaten de te nga so chitsukon rinji ta ta samkhang ge thoteng thelaya pengyo reswa modis tambalaya te ton deshi to ta tigi lendela gelage deshi te pe ya godus lende ta pe ya godus na te ton jewi kolaya nga so sanin zinja kapse ya
Okay.
One question.
Oh yeah, I have just one more thing I'll say to this one, and then we'll question. Is just the socializing or the psychological aspect. As I don't think that has been studied, or at least I don't know about it. So there's a second study, 2 studies to do right there.
삼캔게 지금 고바치고라 삼캔게 네버티 간라야 아니 단도티 간라야 딱시 지문도 된스탄발라야 뭐막 때당 단다인데도 냠도던 바이나 단도티 간라 아속에 지금 가서 그랬다 딱시 드브종야기 조심하스나 아니 두스.
And I think there is another
Yes, go one question. Gisela.
Yeah. Seems like they have a correlationship between duration of sleep and Alzheimer's disease. So is there any record? It seems like, my guess is especially after the smartphone distributed, and the people definitely less sleep, or all, especially younger generations. So it seems, is there any nowadays, they have do you have any found that we have a more Alzheimer's diseases, or that they have no record yet because it's a longevity still not yet come.
Yeah, I think, again, this is a great question and an idea for another study, that it seems this study could be looking at the connections of maybe less sleep due to technology at an early age and how does this impact the prevalence of Alzheimer's at a later age?
Tanda gisla draw the terwa so ni tanda de caps kurani parola ya new between the down and Alzheimer nasani parola ya tinde rachitu sta tanda de mana hopper to that tuchigi tero de caps in but nye and quet the yon do or they let in the time young co Alzheimer nasa de la kitchen to your mare mandu your mare satina do toxid your is that what the land the laya tanda imana do your mares that the young asuga toxid the ne chagdus that lu zheng caps lu zheng caps and it chichila which you switch to and it nuclear doing the yon do by bana nitela the lu game by chance tambalaya Simon nasa the enjoy and chinyan kachir drugger ways toxid masuga just dramatic dose.
And I would agree with what you mentioned about that we don't really have these data yet because it does take time. We'd have to see the effects of people using technology when they're young and maybe not sleeping as much, but then we'd have to see, what's happening 40 years later or something like that.
The Nansing Charanga Somatella Kilenchi is Tandanga so Lucian Capsuga go to Chipechi Tamba Tela and they take that Simon Nasati John switching connectivity said ko Jun Ramponga Sutawa Kusutanda Pichitane, Lucimata, Lucichical Halaya, Tigi, Lucichilhag Jelaya, and switching connectivity do set the Tavaris.
Yeah, and then I think we've got time for one more question or comment before we'll do one last finishing exercise.
Could you please give a clarification on how to read the graph? There is on the slide number 30.
Slide 30. Okay, let me find that. I'll share so that we can all see it as well. Okay. And so do you have any specific question or just an overview?
So my question is, can you please explain a little bit more on how to read this data?
Yes.
In the graphs.
Yeah, and so I'll do a little background. So this type of graph is often called a box and whisker plot.
The Genagi Joatica Resina, Tanda de Gala, Tushi de Gana Vichu, Tanto de Ganda Slow Resra, that team by Nantella, dig Jabjon Shigins, that Telaya, Tushi de Rudelaya, box and whisker like that could Tushi Tanda, the Galaya, Tola Yosachi, or dinner do Ganambachigana Congress.
And the general idea of these types of graphs is, let's say that you have your full data set, you have from the lowest value to the highest value. And in these graphs, it's going to break it up into 4 pieces.
Dinner do capsule chelaya, Nitam Tochi, by Bana Tanto de and de capsule at Insimando Shina Bushagres.
And the way that these 4 pieces are shown on here is this is one at the bottom. And then this section would be a second piece. This is a third piece. And then, then this is the 4th piece here. And it's intended to show that this is where the lowest 25% of the data is, and then this would be the next set. So then it's like 25 to 50, and then 50 to 75, and 75 to 100.
Walk a mashugi jachele con the starting as a walk non the digestion is sangati wall as one bache, need to see take to show matic and honor, and it take jela jachan sangani and nachu power with the sambache, take gantela and nachu dinstomache, near ganget ticket in stone and a jag power with somewhere else.
So the big picture idea of these is that you can use this middle line to see the median, so that middle part of the data. and you can see the range. So you can see median, and then you can see what's the range going up and the range going down.
handa de ka sen bana chu kada tana degrees na trishig na la thichi to te ge korang ge ta tangthu na ni paro ge yuma tiwa chi ka kima se gorwa tangthu na ni tiwa se na degrees chima yana yuma ti karim ba ti che ani tangthu ti chapse chirwa thoshi ti ko la du mashi ti ko la du se tin dus that grace.
And then just one more thing with these graphs, because there's a good example here. Sometimes you'll have an individual data point that's way different from all the other ones. And that's what happened here. It's out by itself. So mostly all the data is here, and then they had just this one out here, and it's called an outlier.
Yeah, the data ne shenda chikar sena chach to cha de khar su gor sena khu ge ta data ne tangtu kang chirwa ta pe tanda gi chapse de de cholog la be de ke gi yo data ne ko chach kin du som ba chi shayo res.
And so is that does that at least mostly sort of answer the question?
Length is.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we are almost done. I'm just going to ask for one last thing before we finish up for the evening. And this is a very short activity that I do at the end of most of my classes, and I call it the Golden Nugget activity.
De kaps tanda nga chu chegu chi dai ins ro de nga namjin zenda tribu kaps zenda ge thama de la chi yes ta de la ya ta min de sa tok se da sa tok nya ya la ning tan tan de bi chegu se yes.
And what this is you will think about, and you can also talk with your team to pick, if there was only one piece of information from today that you could tell a friend who isn't here right now, what would it be? And the idea is you need to pick just one. This is the one key piece of information.
Da tirang hamsen thiba te ge na ne wa ne ke te thon tan dina yong ma thu bi mi chi la chorong ngo twe chi ge yo bai bai na ani ngo twe chi ya ge ani chi ga ta ton da ke chi shu su gro da chorong ga na tan dan de na ne to chu ge nang tong ke chi shu na ton yang den shu chi dam se na ne ton yang den shu tan ya na ke chi shu en pen to shu te ge na ne chi bu de kare in sa ne.
And today for time, we'll take just 1 minute to talk with each other, and then we'll ask just one person to share so that we don't go too late.
That tanda de kapse tirenga su karmashik rang la tis chechu nang khune twi de che ani ti che la karmashik nang la ya ni mi chi ke ne karim ba te mo tu che ko ba tik yes.
Yes, and once someone is ready to share, we'll go ahead and do that. And hopefully tomorrow I'll leave a little bit more time for it, but I don't want to go too late.
That mi chi ke ani kare to the chongso te de shi ja ro chi da san ne san yin ba na yo ko this yang te de shi ja chi to ko ka this suma ko yes.
nge jaw da de kharse gore lo yasal ani lo yas chu ni ma dre da lo mesal lumba til ani lo yas chu ni to ya pha sto da deep non rodus.
For me, the two data set, two graphs you have mentioned, that one where we have like electricity, artificial light, people tend to sleep less, want to age, and in other place, on the other hand, where there's no light, no electricity, people tend to sleep more when they age. That's the point that I would take home.
Okay, yeah, I think that's great. And like I said, tomorrow I'll try to save more time to hear from more people. But for now, I will just say thank you so much. And I look forward to continuing this conversation tomorrow.
배야 부두스 두지치 네 산이 바나 가서 점천 제다 점천 맞중을야 니미 까마망라야 네 지금 삼스송할 거 트릭인스다 디랑 속에 참들라 샤긴스 두치
Thank you.